From Friday, March 18th through Sunday, March 20th, sell your cards or minis to CoolStuffInc.com and get a 25% bonus when you take store credit as payment. Their system is super smooth. You enter what you're going to sell them, mail it in, and once verified, you get paid. CoolStuffInc.com. Cool stuff in stock.
That's a very that's like an interview question. I mean, I guess I would pick some famous person I just wanted to meet because then I get to meet them.
Yeah. That's totally where I was going with this.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I think that for example, Jim Henson always been an idol of mine, and I met him once,
really?
very very briefly. But it's the kind of person who I love to sit down and chat with, and just while I play, talk to.
Right.
I mean, that's the kind of person I would pick as someone who. It's not so much the playing; it would be just someone to be fun to chat with while I play.
Right.
As far as someone I'd like to play from a Magic, who would I like Magic against? I played Magic against most people you can think I'd want to play Magic against. When I used to work on the Pro Tour, one of the things I would do is I would always play the winner after hours, and nice. So I played a lot of Pro Tour lost to a lot of Pro Tour champions, and and like I said, it's fun. I love playing with the R&D guys, and Richard Garfield's fun to play against. I don't know. I don't know who to name.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, historically, yeah. I mean, one thing I'm interested in is that, Magic, for a lot of people that are really just, smart, clever, creative people, you can learn a lot about their thought process by how they play Magic, right? So I'd love to play, I name drop this guy, it seems like all the time, but I'd love to play Magic against David Foster Wallace. Unfortunately, that's not possible anymore, but he's this genius on a ton of axes. He's a really interesting guy, and it's you wonder if you showed Albert Einstein or something Magic, if they had just come up with some crazy Satoshi Nakamura deck out of absolutely nowhere.
Einstein would be a Johnny. That's my goal prediction.
So yeah, I mean, just any or just some random genius, just totally has nothing to do with Magic, but I think you'd learn a lot about how they think based on what they do with that. And then in terms of Magic players, it's one of my favorite. I love playing against Steve Saden and Brian Kibler because they're really entertaining. So hey,
so here's another way you could go. Pick somebody that you'd want to brag that you beat. I beat Hitler at Magic.
Rosewater said that, not me about it.
I know that quote's going on the internet now.
I mean, you've talked about the R&D sitcom before,
yes.
right?
Oh,
R&D definitely is the word.
That's my next career. I'm writing the R&D sitcom.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone in R&D has a distinct personality, right? And I mean, I think it's fair to say that it's way more diverse than a lot of work environments in terms of how distinct those personalities are.
And that's why I make an awesome sitcom.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it was interesting. Another thing, going back to my interview with Aaron, he mentions, it's a lot of people who are the smartest person in the room now working in a small, not small, but a centralized location, and so that the ideas, I think you were saying in your interview with Evan, was the ideas are very cut through. The people are all nice to each other, person to person, but ideas, it's a no holds barred.
Yeah, one of the things that's funny is when you are used to being the smartest person in the room, you kind of get lazy because you don't explain things, you just sort of shortcut things.
Right.
But when you get in a room and the people question things and actually say, that doesn't work and here's why, and you have to start thinking you have to explain yourself much better. And so one of the coolest things I think of being in R&D is it really sharpens sort of your oratory skills of explaining what you mean.
And the thing that's nice about it is that everyone in R&D really cares that Magic is awesome and good, right? So it's whenever we're ripping apart each other's ideas, it's not in bad faith, or it's not to fulfill some narrative about yourself. It's because we really want Magic to be as awesome as it can be. So, when I'm questioning Mark about his mechanics, or he's asking me about my development decisions, you have to come up with good answers, because if you don't, you're not making Magic as good as it can be.
Well, here's what happens. This is a lot of my time here in R&D is I'm a word person, and so whenever I want to explain something I mean, I'll just make a word for it so that I can explain it. And so a lot of R&D's vocabulary is just me wanting to explain something and going, okay, here's a word for it. It's this. This is what that means. And so the psychographics came about because at the time I felt like we were making cards and we didn't know who they were for.
Right.
And I'm like, who's this for? And like, well, I think this card is for such and such.
So then you had the original three, Melvin and Vorthos, then joined the groups.
Well, they're not very different. Yeah, they're not second graphics. I keep trying to explain this. It's a tricky thing. It's a different. Melvin and Vorthos look at what people like about the game, meaning the aspect of how the game is portrayed to them, which is a different thing about the psychic graphics are what is the emotional reason I play? What do I get out of the game emotionally? You know, do I want people to recognize me? Do I want people to, am I proving something to people? You know, it's very about internal emotional things.
Right.
Vorthos and Melvin are about what you appreciate and how you appreciate the game. That's a different thing. It's important. I'm glad we have the terms, we use the terms, but they're not the same thing.
Okay.
And I know people want to clump them together, but you can be a Johnny Vorthos, for example, because they're different axes. You know, they're not on the same level, so that they intersect in different ways.
Okay.
Right. And you could be a Timmy Spike, but it's a different kind of interaction.
Right.
And those you're making a few concessions to each side. With like Melvin and Vorthos, those don't relate on like a game mechanical aspect in the same way. So they are a little bit different, but they're a great example at the same time. For me, like, I mean, I don't think it's accidental that a lot of Magic designers and developers have computer programming backgrounds, right? We saw that a lot in the
Not me, though.
Yeah, not Mark, definitely not me either. But, you know, for me, it depends a lot on what hat I'm wearing. Not literally. But like, you know, when I'm a developer, I tend to view Magic as a series of interactions because I'm trying to balance those interactions in a way that's pleasing and doesn't break the system. But when I'm designing cards, a lot of the time I view Magic through the lens of experiences, right? And like what the act of playing Magic, how that makes a person feel and what they're trying to get out of it. And so then I don't really care about the mechanics at all. Other times, like when I'm doing creative stuff, I view Magic through the lens of narrative. Right. And not just narrative in terms of the story on the cards, but what story the actions of the game are telling. You know, like when you Day of Judgment all your opponent's creatures, that is like a comeback moment that, you know, in a story is a certain type of narrative itself, right?
Right.
So I think, you know, a lot of how you view what the interactions in Magic are is dependent on sort of what perspective you're looking at it from. You know, as a player, I mean, a lot of times I viewed Magic through the lens of this is how I'm going to make $10,000 this year, right? So, I mean, I think it really depends on what you're trying to get out of it and what it is you're analyzing.
I mean, one of the things that when you interview writers, for example, and talk about how you make a script, there's a common story you'll hear. Well, I created these characters, and then I just let them sort of fight it out on the page. Like the character sort of, the story brought itself to life is sort of how they talk about it. And Magic sets are very similar, especially from the design standpoint, where it's like the sets kind of gets its identity, figures out what it is, and then it tells you what it wants. Like,
completely.
Like, Scars became this battle between Mirrodin and Phyrexian. So the set said, well, give me Mirrodin things and give me Phyrexian things. As you started doing that, you started realizing, oh, well, if you're doing these things, then I need this thing. And it starts all falling through. And that good design kind of leads you to where it wants to go. And then the role of a designer is following along and doing justice to what it wants.
Right, like we didn't know Mirrodin would have, you know, Battle Cry or whatever it is.
Yes.
Is that what it's?
Battle Cry, yeah.
Battle Cry. We didn't know that Living Weapon would be in Mirrodin Besieged, right? Like those weren't, but those are what Mirrodin and Phyrexia wanted in that set.
Yes.
You know, and it's weird to say, here's some imaginary things, here's what they want, but as you let the identity of the set play out, it sort of tells you what it needs.
Well, I hear voices. So
right. Well, we're all schizophrenic. There's that.
That explains so much.
Yes, Yawgmoth, what do you, more poison?
I mean, when I was a player, I read literally everything.
Right.
Now I read probably the 3 or 4 big Magic websites. I try to at least glance over everything on them. You know, I mean, I can't say that I read them all religiously, but I want to, you know, as a developer, I want to keep track of the standard environment and the extended environment, the legacy environment. I'm also really interested in the narrative of Magic. It's important to me to like read a tournament report and figure out, okay, well, what does Magic mean to people? You know, are people achieving value from this? So yeah, I try to keep pace with a lot of the major websites to just understand what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I read a lot of websites. Funny thing is, I read a lot of email. I mean, I'm a big on reading boards. I like sort of seeing opinions on things. And so it's fun to see individual people talk in articles, but it's also fun to see people respond to those articles. Right. I'm on Twitter now, and so like I constantly ask questions to my Twitter followers, and I'm really curious, like, what do you guys think about this or think about that? And it fascinates me because people have very different opinions about things, and so, like, a perfect example is Poison right now, is I'm trying to gauge did people like Poison, not like Poison? And the answer is not one answer. There's no one definitive answer. It's like some people really, really like it. Some hate it with a passion. And like, well, the people that love it, why do they love it? The people that hate it, why do they hate it? And try to understand, what makes it tick and why is this thing so polarizing.
Another thing I think that's unique to Magic is that, a lot of their games, certainly a lot of other companies, don't have the type of feedback and back and forth that we have with a lot of our players. I mean, we're conducting this interview right now, right? But that's really important to all of us because, we use that feedback tremendously. Right, and that's not saying that every single time you're on an article, we listen and just do what it says, but it is really, Magic is an incredibly complex system, and it is really hard to design to that without having some sort of finger on the pulse of the audience.
Right.
I mean, the thing that people, it's funny because one of the things, Magic is a very complex game.
Yeah.
It's funny because everyone talks about dumbing down the game, and I'm like, can you name a game more complex than Magic? It's like, there's really nowhere to go. It's our job is to sort of wrangle this beast of a game, which we love, but it is very hard to sort of get the essence of the game without getting bogged down.
Right.
It's very easy when you watch people design cards that they make 12 lines of text because they're trying to capture something. And you just can't put 12 lines of text on a card. And so we have to find sort of the most elegant version of things.
Right.
And a big part of doing that is interacting with the public. When the day is done and Scars is put to bed, I want to know what worked in Scars and what didn't. Like we talked about Mirror of Siege pre-release. I think that was a big success. I think that says to us, you know what? We should do more events. We should do more things that really involve the players and get them invested in making choices and invested in the story. And players seem to really enjoy that, so we should do that. And what the public doesn't realize is the reason we are so outreaching in sort of our communication is we want the same. We want reciprocal communication. We tell you a lot of things because you do tell us a lot of things.
Right.
And that our entire relationship is very much built on having this rapport with our audience. I've talked to a lot of designers in other games, and they're so jealous. They're like, the rapport we have with our audience is really, really unique and rare. That is not true in most games.
Right.
And that, it's something we value and something that we spend a lot of energy on.
And it's kind of difficult to explain to people outside the Magic community, how the Magic community websites and stuff like that work. I wrote for a Magic website for 4.5 years, but it's what other game produces this amount of strategy content that you can reasonably expect to be consumed by a huge percentage of the people that play it.
Yeah.
There's no parallel for it. It's not like you go to ESPN.com and have Kobe writing about basketball.
Yeah.
So it's a really unique dynamic. Or have the equivalent of Rosewater sitting there talking about how all of the decisions are made.
Yes.
It's it's something that is truly and uniquely valuable.
And something that said the public, obviously, that one of the things I love is the ownership the players take on the game.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's funny where I'll go out and I'll say something and go, how dare you do something? Like I slapped their mother or something. Really the
Which is
offense.
A quarter of your emails. It seems like it's not, but it seems like
the thing I love is the fact that the people who play the game, they really care. One of the things we talk about in R&D is we really care. One of the things that I think is a defining quality of R&D is we love the game. To all of us, the game really meant a lot to us. I met my wife through the game, and I've made a lot of money through the game, and I made a living through the game, and it's not just some thing to me. It is something that's brought me tons of happiness and really defined my life, and that I want to give back, and I want to make Magic the best game it can be. And look, I understand the players want that too, and so when I make a card that someone doesn't like, it really offends them sometimes, and I can't believe you didn't make a goat. Where's the goat? You reference goats and there's no goat. And I get, multiple emails about how there's no goat in Lorwyn.
Where's the goat?
And the funny thing is, I fought for the goat. I fought for the goat and I lost. That's the greatest thing.